Okay, excellent. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you thank you, Giovanni. Thank you to the hosts of the meeting. We always welcome any opportunity to talk to small talkers or non-small talkers about Smalltalk and Cincom Smalltalk. Let's see. One of the things I want to start with, I know there was a bio, but probably everyone on this call has a unique path to how they got started with Smalltalk or how they discovered Smalltalk. So I just want to briefly mention mine in case some of the experiences are the same or it resonates. So when I graduated college, I started working for IBM, local semiconductor manufacturing company. And I was always looking for better ways to do software development. And that involved looking at new and experimental languages like MELD, like John Bacchus's FP. We actually had an internal implementation of that at IBM. So I was also part of a group looking at building future semiconductor manufacturing systems for IBM. Semiconductor manufacturing. And in 1986, my project handed us all this book. Some of you may be familiar with it, by Brad Cox. And it basically outlined the benefits of object-oriented programming. And it also introduced Objective-C and how it was basically patterned off this great thing called Smalltalk. And I had two takeaways from this book, which I consumed. First was object-oriented programming solves a lot of issues in development methodologies, and this Smalltalk thing sounds great. So I looked to see if there were any Smalltalk implementations, and there was Methods by Digitalk, and shortly after they came out with Smalltalk V. So I got my hands on those and started learning Smalltalk and building things in Smalltalk. The biggest thing I noticed was in learning different Smalltalks, the domain stuff is easy. It's usually really straightforward and simple. And a lot of your time is spent becoming familiar with the GUI framework. And Smalltalk, the interesting thing to me is that I always looked at different languages and things all the time. And then I stopped because Smalltalk basically checked off all the boxes. I could get all the things that I wanted to get built quickly, easily, clearly in Smalltalk. So actually went back and did my master's thesis work in Smalltalk. It was Petri net simulation. And I built some factory floor layout tools in Smalltalk for IBM. Later, IBM was having some cutbacks and they were basically killing the project I was working on. So I wanted to continue working with Smalltalk. And I found out that Park Place was opening up a New York office at the time. So I joined Park Place. And interesting thing, when I joined Park Place, I had been doing, this was 1992, I had been doing Smalltalk for 5-6 years. So for that wave, I was almost an old timer. And I know there's some people probably on this call that have been around the block and even helped build the block. So we have a lot of experience on this call. But one other thing, it was kind of a life lesson, and that is there's an old adage, see one, do one, teach one. And that's, I think it's largely from the medical community. But the thing about it is, when I joined Park Place, I worked as an SE. So I traveled around with sales and demonstrated, taught some Smalltalk and demonstrated our products, ObjectWorks, and later that year, VisualWorks, to potential customers. But then I had an opportunity to join the teaching staff at Park Place. And I taught a lot of classes in the Manhattan. We opened up a classroom in Manhattan. And then I also traveled around the country some and taught week-long classes. And even though I'd been working with Smalltalk for years, felt comfortable with it, built systems, once you spend some time teaching, you have to explain, you have to answer difficult questions, you have to help solve people's different perceptions with learning the technology, when they manage to break things in the development environment, figuring out what they did, and then also developing. I developed the intermediate course, but the point is that even with the intro class, after a year of doing that, I think I doubled my competence in Smalltalk. So I call that a life lesson, because it's even something I pass on to my kids, that whatever discipline you're involved in, if you have the opportunity to teach it, you'll learn much more about it yourself. So it's a big advantage. So one of my goals for the presentation is to share some information that hopefully you have not heard. So I was able to dig up a couple things that even was brand new to me. So hopefully some things are new. Some of this talk will be sharing ideas and insights of what we think is attractive about Smalltalk, and how to present it to non-small talkers, because part of the focus of our work is growing the Smalltalk community, and I welcome feedback on the ideas. Like, is this the most attractive thing? What things are attractive to new people? And like I said, a lot of the folks on this call have a lot of perspective and experience. So I'll mention briefly who is Cincom. Lots of people probably know, but it'll be for those who don't, we'll mention it. What is Cincom Smalltalk? We have a couple products. Why do people choose Smalltalk? Recent developments in our products, notable features, and some demonstrations along the way. This is Smalltalk headquarters, and this is actually a drone shot by our media team. Cincom is sometimes called the most experienced private software company in the US. It's over 50 years old. And one personal anecdote, back when I was at IBM, one of the things I did was research relational database technology, and reading the works and articles by Edgar Codd. And at one time he was evaluating relational database systems to see, and basically ranking them as to which were the most relational by his standards. And I remember reading an article about this relational database called Supra, and he basically gave it the highest grade as being the most relational of the relational database products. It met more criteria than any other. And that product Supra was by Cincom. So years later, when Cincom acquired ObjectShare, I was like, that name rings a bell, and I remember that name. So it was interesting to kind of see that a couple times in my career. The Smalltalk group at Cincom, and I know we have a number on this call, are pro Smalltalk. So, well, what does that mean? Well, part is we wish success for all the Smalltalk dialects, and of course, we want prospective customers. We would like them to evaluate our products, and we hope it's a perfect fit. But if it's not a perfect fit, we'd prefer they use any Smalltalk dialect versus some other language or technology. We want the total Smalltalk market to be increased. And I think when any of the Smalltalks have success, it benefits. The rising tide for Smalltalk lifts all the Smalltalk boats. So speaking of, I was talking to a previous engineering manager years ago, and it always stuck in my head because we were talking about the different dialects, and he said we're all in a boat together, all the different dialects, and we can row together or hit each other over the head with the paddles, and that was always a colorful picture. So Cincom is a commercial provider of Smalltalk, so we have a particular focus of making sure our changes to the product support our customer base, and we're careful to make sure that they can continue being successful with Smalltalk. So we have a couple Smalltalk products. First being ObjectStudio, and before it was ObjectStudio, it was Enfin Talk, and owned by companies like Enfin, Easel, and VMark. But one thing I learned new about it was the predecessor to Enfin was something called Scope. And Scope stood for Signal Command-Oriented Programming Environment. Okay, that's new to me. Another thing that was new a few years ago, at one time, ObjectStudio was sold by IBM in Europe as IBM Smalltalk. Wow. In 1992, ObjectStudio was acquired by Cincom. So I guess it's almost been 30 years now that they've had some Smalltalk products. VisualWorks, which came from ObjectShare, Park Place, Xerox PARC, was acquired by Cincom in 1999. ObjectStudio is we call the business analyst thinking tool. It has some UML-like tools that allow a domain expert and developer to work together in developing a system. VisualWorks, our cross-platform do-anything tool, works across a number of platforms and came originally out of Xerox PARC. So I mentioned we're a commercial provider and we have a customer focus. This is a list of a few of our customers that we have. And if any of you are involved with keeping a Smalltalk dialect up to date, it's a significant amount of work with multiple platforms, even just to stay even. What do I mean? Well, you've got things like new operating systems, and that can include new compilers, API changes. Recently, we're even seeing CPU changes, new standards that come out, new protocol updates, and last but not least, are customer requirements. So in our development, customer requirements, we have a joke, kind of half serious, half humorous, that customers would like us to advance the products but don't change anything. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because you want things to improve, get better, add new relevant capabilities, update all the protocols as required, but you want things to be as compatible as possible, because changes, if you're a customer with tens of thousands of interfaces, it's a lot of work. If you have something that, it only takes a small change, it can be a lot of work, and actually you could make your customer suddenly no longer successful with Smalltalk. So it's something that a commercial provider has to be very, very carefully attuned to. One of the things we do is get, how do we know what the customer requirements are? Well, we always welcome our customers to contact us and invite us to come visit them, give a roadmap. We call them listening sessions, though, because we're primarily there to hear how they're using it, what their issues are, what things are important to them. Our marketing group does customer user stories, and the product management group does mini surveys to get feedback on things we want specific information on. By the way, the noise isn't here. I didn't just walk down the stairs with the microphone. So some of the product management goals, a couple are obvious: improve and advance the product, respond to customer needs. I'm going to just talk a little bit about, it's really important to us to bring new users to Smalltalk and help educate both new users and our current users. So one of the things that we do is We have a monthly screencast called Hidden Gems. And Hidden Gems, we say, is shows you capabilities of the product that they might be hidden, or you may not know about them, but we think you'll benefit from. So we show different ways to use different tools, how to use some of the tools in the product, how different techniques, lots of different things. And we've built up quite a bit. I'll show some of those in this. Product management themes. The first is flow. Flow is a state of mind where focus and productivity and performance are off the charts. I always think that Smalltalk is such a perfect fit for this concept, because developers using Smalltalk, for example, in the debugger, can, you can test your code, you can change your code, you can recompile your code, you can run it, you can look at the results. All those things takes longer to say than do. So you can get into a flow state of really super high productivity in Smalltalk. And we mention this because we mention this to our development team. Make sure we support and continue the ability for developers to work in a flow state. A flow state is often used with extreme sports and extreme athletes, where losing focus can be a matter of life and death. Fortunately, less critical for us. API, one of the things we've learned with talking to customers for years and years is almost all our customers take advantage of the development environment being in Smalltalk and making customizations in the development environment to support how they use it. And this is important because most products don't offer that. And this is something, rather than a customer being forced to work the way the vendor wants you to, they can customize their environment. So API, I mentioned that because whenever we come out with something new or looking at traditional things, we want to make sure that there's an API that lets people access it and customize it if it makes sense to, because that's one of the kind of the secret advantages of Smalltalk and how people are able to be successful with it. Finally, I touched on before, compatibility and upgrading. It's important that we don't make changes that make upgrading so costly that it basically puts them out of Smalltalk. I have a PM mantra that we discuss with the engineering team is, if you make changes, make sure they're worth it. So don't make the customer change their code unless they're getting a really clear benefit and they're happy to make those changes. So why do people choose Smalltalk? And I know everybody here probably has ideas. We try to spend a good bit of time thinking about it to understand how we can attract more people to Smalltalk. So, how do you explain it? Even with people who are not technical at all, I always like to say, well, when they ask what I do, and I work with this language called Smalltalk, and I say, well, do you use a computer? Yes, most people use a computer. The graphical user interface, drag and drop. You call these things files and you store them in folders. That's an office metaphor. And all these things were done at Xerox PARC in a language called Smalltalk. And they basically pioneered a lot of the foundation of what we have today in modern computing. And they can relate to that. So developing applications with Smalltalk, what's different or better about it? Well, it immerses you in interactivity with the live environment. We call it the debugger, but that's probably a bad name compared with a debugger in other environments. So you have this live, super productive environment. Doing more, doing better, and doing it with less. And if you were to try to summarize Smalltalk and object-oriented into a sentence or two, trying to explain what's better about it, you might say that, well, with Smalltalk, you can do the same amount of work with less code and clearer code. And overall, if you think about it, it's better organization, kind of in a nutshell. It's better organization. Why? Well, object-oriented for one. If you need to develop some code, where does that code go? Well, it belongs to the class who's responsible for that, the object that's responsible for that. So object-oriented is a big improvement just on organization and how you think about things. And that alone is a kind of a different or simplistic way of looking at one of the major benefits of Smalltalk. I touched on customization of the development environment, which we take for granted, but not everyone can do. And people use that. People make the environment, the development environment, work for them rather than having to change to work the way the vendor wants you to. And especially from the management perspective, how do you pitch it to management? It's return on investment. If you take the life cycle of a software project, and not just Smalltalk, any software project, there's a lot of work up front, but then a lot of the work is changes, fixes, and maintenance over the life cycle of that product. And done correctly in Smalltalk, you get a big return on investment. It's a lot less costly to develop and maintain a system in Smalltalk. One other point is that because Smalltalk is simpler, it lets you get your arms around more difficult problems, and you can be successful with some difficult software. And we've often seen this when people try to move to a different technology that doesn't yield that benefit. And sometimes they spend more money than it costs them to develop it in Smalltalk, and they fail and come back to Smalltalk. So it's interesting seeing those things over time. So that's some of the perspective about what we try to think about, how we can attract people to Smalltalk. Now let's talk about some changes in the product. So we've got changes in a number of different areas that I'll talk about. First is the VM. The VM, one of the things we do is, it may be underappreciated, but it's really important. We have platform updates, most recently with new builds and compilers on Windows and Linux. Between 8.x and 9.1, we're at 9.1.1 currently. We fully support perm space for our 64-bit images. We have 32 and 64. Some platforms are moving to 64 only, Mac OS in particular. We fixed a Linux restriction for processes space. And across the VMs, we've improved font measurement for better and more accurate layouts. And finally, we've done some research and development on what it would take to have a multi-threaded VM. Protocols, we have, for back some years and a number of cycles back, we had all our encryption work done in Smalltalk. And that started to become an issue we're an international company, we export our product, and to get export certification got more and more difficult when we had encryption done in Smalltalk. So we externalized it for a few reasons. We externalized it to make it easier to export, but we also got other benefits of, we use the up-to-date standards that are out there, and with the highly optimized code that's out there to stay up to date and run faster for that work. So we shifted that. We have a new TLS plugin that supports advanced encryption. We support OpenSSL 1.1. You may have heard of, we have something in OpenTalk called STST, OpenTalk STST. That stands for Smalltalk to Smalltalk Communication. between images, and it can be images on a machine, it can be images on a network, that lets you do that really pretty easily. Communicate in terms of objects. So they're packaged, you can send a message across the network, package up the object result and ship it back over the socket. And we've recently improved that. We basically looked at all the feedback we got from customers and wish lists from customers. And there were some restrictions, such as the size of the messages. So we got rid of most of the restrictions, and also we allow secure communication. Another protocol we added is OAuth 2.0, which we now support. We've continued to improve our TLS plugin, improving that the past few releases. And we have a new certificate API. Another protocol that we got ahead of a little while back was supporting HTTP 2, which most of the industry has moved towards. Source code control. So our source code control is primarily Store, and with Store works with a number of popular relational databases. So we have improved the atomic loading. We've improved things like if you rename something, you used to lose your visibility to back versions. So we've vastly improved that. So if you change the name of something, you can still, it basically understands the new name and the old name, so you can see old versions of something still, even after changing the names, which was important when those changes happen. We added MySQL support, and one of the big areas in performance for Store is recursive query support. So where you might have had a number of database calls for loading something, now a lot of that can be done with a single call using recursive query support. On the right-hand side here is from one of the hidden gems I mentioned. This one is showing how to use, it shows how to find, load, set up, and use the Store replicator. And the Store replicator allows you to replicate between two Store databases. So for example, if you want to keep two Store databases, different databases in sync, you can do that with this tool. We also use this internally. You can also do things, one of the databases we support is SQLite, which is a really neat file-based SQL product. So you can basically select a subset or even back up your whole database, Store database, and write that to a SQLite file. So maybe if I want to share with somebody on my team, I can write those things to a SQLite file through Store. They can mount it through Store and see the different versions and have those other things. It's just one more way of sharing things and some flexibility because of the databases that are supported. Oops. Database. We have a number of enhancements for Postgres, which is one of the databases we support. We support the recursive queries on SQL Server. We added JSON API support for MySQL and a number of glorp query enhancements. The graphical user interface and tools. We call it GUI tools. So a lot has been going on here with the GUI tools team. We've been doing a lot of infrastructure work on VisualWorks for basically adding new capabilities while keeping things compatible for customers with the big investments in the interfaces. On the ObjectStudio side, we have a new data visualization framework that uses the Object Studio's NGUI, which is Next Generation User Interface. We also have actually, I'm going to show a couple of these things. But by the way, this graphic, as well as this one here, were from one of the hidden gems. These are the returns for every date of the year for the S&P 500s going back, I think 5 or 6 decades. It gets the average return for each day, and it basically presents it as a heat map. So a dark green will be a slight positive, a bright green will be a higher positive, a dark red will be a small negative, and a bright red will be a larger negative. So you can basically see what days of the year on average are up days and which are down days. This was one of the hidden gems, and also our Object Studio team has replicated this using the Next Generation User Interface also. So we show how to do this, and this interface is actually built dynamically. So all these pieces are added programmatically, so you can see how to do that rather than sit with a painting tool and put a large number of widgets in place. Let me, bear with me one second. I'm going to recorded a couple things in case I had any issues. So here is a COVID-19 data visualization. All the data is open source. Here's an application where you can see line graphs for new cases, deaths, and recoveries for all the countries available. It'll show a few countries here. Next up will be an application that shows basically the data in a tabular format. Open that up. So here's basically a summary by country for all the data available. Next allows you to look at the details for any country. And it's 0, most of the things are 0 where it starts up and the numbers pick up later. Try to find a country with a little more data. I think India has a lot. And as we scroll down, we start to see bigger numbers. And finally, we have where you can compare and get a graphical representation for a couple countries. So choose the US and India and decide what number to start at, and then list it out. So that shows the data on the left and a graphical representation on the right using the Next Generation User Interface graphics framework. The next thing is, I mentioned most customers customize their development tools. So we have a hidden gems where we show something. I basically wanted to use the browser, and I'm going to I'll open up the browser right here. And of course, the browser has everything, all the bundles, all the classes, all the methods available in here. And sometimes you want that. And you can hone in on something, go to the array class. You can also, if you want to find a particular method or particular class, type in the name of the class. You'll see it right there. But what if you just want to see just the things from your local store or just the things from your project. So I show you how to add this. The flyover says browse my system, and it has the browser just showing the bundles and packages for your local store or whatever store you choose. You can make it you can customize it to any store. So sometimes you just want to see in a very quick, concise fashion, just your stuff, because it's easier to find and work with those things when that's what you want. Also, at the end of the day, after you're done and you've got changes all over the class hierarchy, you may want to see what's unpublished because you want to publish it to store so your work is saved. Well, that other icon shows how to basically bring up an RB browser with just what needs to be published. So I found this is helpful for doing development, and a number of some of the engineers use this now as well. The ones with the plus, the red plus, those are packages that need to be published. Show here how the code for doing this. The hidden gem screencast walks through it in detail, but it's fairly simple to do and gives people something concrete they can work with, or the idea about how they can do that type of work themselves. Okay, with our web products, we support a number of things, including Seaside, but our primary web work is the SUE web server and AppX web framework. And we continue to update and build and improve the tools and provide examples for that. So more recently, we support ECMAScript 6 JavaScript for AppX. The SUE web server has been upgraded to be able to use secure connections with TLS. And also we have in the browser, the code editor, also supports not only Smalltalk, but JavaScript. So it can parse and highlight and show senders and other implementers and such of your JavaScript code, which you can develop in these products and store just like all your Smalltalk code. Another important thing is product examples, especially in the web environment where things may be more complex. We have we have actually dozens of examples now, from doing simple things and working with other JavaScript frameworks like React. We continue to add new examples with basically every release as we also improve the tools. I always say you can do things fairly simply with Smalltalk, but if you have an example that's close to exactly what you want to do, that's your fastest path moving forward. And so we've had feedback from customers who want those examples because they're not as familiar in the web environment as they are the Smalltalk environment. One of the things we've done over time is both our Smalltalk products share a large foundation, and most of the work that our engineers do goes into that foundation, so it's available in both products as we move towards it. We started with that with version 9, and we're continuing to move the products closer and closer together. Some notable things that I'd like to talk about. I attended another product informational discussion not too long back, and one of the things that was discussed was asynchronous capabilities. I think all the Smalltalks have some asynchronous capabilities. They may have it all slightly different, but it's important because it's a way a way to get things done concurrently, which you often want to do, especially when you've got lots of things, lots of work to process. So I want to just mention a couple of some of the ways in Cincom Smalltalk that some of the asynchronous capabilities that we have. And then I'll touch on kind of a recent buzzword called no code, low code, and how we meet some of that definition. So asynchronous capabilities, basically the ability to do things like not block. So our foreign function interface, which is called DLLCC, you have the ability to not block and continue to get work done concurrently using that interface. We also have something called THAPI. Many of you know that stands for Threaded API, and several of our database connections use THAPI, so you can make basically asynchronous database calls. Another is something called Matrix. This is actually one of my favorites. Matrix is a framework that lets you start up headless images, hand them work, and then receive the objects back. And it's a fairly simple, I'll actually show a small example of it. By the way, Matrix in our current releases, it used to be a contributed thing, but it is now fully supported in the product. And you can use Matrix for things like map reduce. And actually one of the hidden gems shows how to implement map reduce using Matrix and Smalltalk. Last, and I'll go into a little more about this, but green threads, which we've had basically forever in the product, but there's some ways to use green threads for an asynchronous ability that I'll go into detail in a moment. So with Matrix, here's an example method. I'm going to create a dictionary, a metric dictionary. I'm going to make it the size of my customers, create a semaphore. And by the way, what this is here, this is a kind of verbose and explicit example. There's actually some small, simple APIs in Matrix, but I wanted to go through kind of a more verbose example to show what you can do or what's going on or some of the flexibility. So N is going to be 5. How many virtual machines do I want is going to be N. I'm going to create a queue of customer keys, and that's going to be a shared queue, and shared queue is concurrent access safe. This is the code to basically launch N virtual machines. So it just takes a couple seconds to start up multiple headless images that are basically going to be sitting there ready to do the work. For each one, let's get the next available key. As long as that key is not nil, so in other words, I'm going to have multiple VMs going against this shared queue, pulling keys and handing out the work to a VM. And this is basically most of the work right here. I basically hand this block to that machine, and the block says, get the customer at key and calculate the metrics, and passes in the customer key as a parameter to the block. So that goes to that headless image, it processes it, and then hands the result back, whatever object or objects back. And I assign that to metric. Then I put the metric in a dictionary. After each one of these is done, when there's no customer keys available in the queue, it shuts the machine down. So it shuts down that image. Then I signal that is done. And then because I want to wait before I leave this method until all the machines have shut down, N times repeat, I wait. And I return the metrics. So that's one example. And like I said, there's some smaller, tighter API to this, but this is kind of a verbose, explicit example of what you can do using Matrix. Green threads I mentioned, if you do, say, call out to a RESTful API, this is where the time goes. It might look something like this. The blue is your call out, the red is your wait, and then you get the data comes back and you process it, which is the green. So you can see most of your time is spent waiting. So if you do this, call, wait, process, and then send out your next call, wait, process, and then send out the next, you're going to be spending a lot of time waiting. With green threads, you can basically compress out a lot of that red time by having it overlap. So for example, as long as the server you're talking to allows the number, you can send out 100 RESTful API calls using green threads. So you can send them out in like 1 second. 100 calls go out. Then this is overlapping. The wait is overlapped. And as each result comes in, it wakes up that green thread, it processes it and shuts down. And then the next can take place. So this is a kind of simple, straightforward way of really improving your throughput for that type of scenario using green threads. Which green threads, as you know, are kind of a simulated concurrency, but in this context, we get actual concurrency. No code, low code. So no code, low code is kind of a current buzzword. It's almost like what they used to call 4GL systems, kind of a maybe modern interpretation of that. ObjectStudio, I mentioned, has modeling and mapping tools, which you can see here. And that's kind of an excellent example of no code, low code tools. But we've got some others. Let me see. I'm going to show you something called a CSV Data Explorer. There's actually an IETF standard for CSV files with the column names up top. I'm going to go to Yahoo Finance, bring up the IBM stock, get 5 years of data I'm selecting, and download that CSV file. Here it is. Let's check it out. I have date, open, high, low, close, volume, adjusted volume. Okay. I have 5 years of that data from 2016 up till now. Let me show you a tool. You can load it right here in ObjectStudio. You can launch it right here, CSV Data Explorer. So I'm going to select a CSV file. I'll choose the one we just downloaded. I'll get the column headers, get some sample rows. I'm going to tell it what these columns are. Since most of them are number, I'm going to say make all the columns number, and then I'll go set a couple. I'll make the date, type date, and volume, I'll make an integer. I'll create the class in cache. It'll create a class called IBM, and it's showing me an example of all the data here in the class name. It's in a namespace called CSV. So let me open a workspace, go csv.ibm. I'll send it the message cache and inspect that. And there's the data. So I can see the high, low, close, open, volume, and the date. And it also has a cache index. And so I basically got this just using this tool. It created the class, and I can send a single message and get all that 5 years of data. because it uses the IETF standards, and because we have a tool that works with that. So that's an example of how we, kind of meet that current buzzword, no code, low code. So we have no code written. Of course, you can go to that class and modify it. Say if you wanted to have an average of the open, high, low, close, you could easily add that single method that provides that. So that would be a low code solution. I have a couple of other product demos. We tabbed Windows API. So one of the things new to the product is a generalized tab API. I mean, most people are familiar with using tabs in Internet Explorers. These are some example applications that I built in the screencast. So here's a stock list app that I now opened by just saying with tabbed window ID, and you give it an ID. Here's another example application that was also shown how we built this, how we went to the internet, downloaded the data, and presented it in this fashion. So I can add that as a tab, just with basically as a one-liner. So now I've got multiple applications running as tabs in a window. Let's add another. One more that shows a chart. And you can also, if you're in a development environment, you can also do things like add a workspace. So you have your a scratch pad area right there in that window. That's adding the workspace. One more thing I want to show you. This is something from one of the hidden gems, a framework called Domain Master. And it shows how you can create something to support modular construction and reusable applications. So it's an example of using some of the benefits of Smalltalk even to a larger degree. And the interesting thing I think about this is if you look at things like this, okay, so here's a simple example application, and you can open it, it's blank. You can say value colon and give it a domain object, and it has that. Now that's a small application piece that you can tie together with others. So here's those two applications tied together. The thing is it's using this example framework. It's actually very trivial to do. It's a couple lines of code. Here's a third application. This goes to the internet, pulls this data from a site down and presents it. So let's take a look at that. The code for that, there's basically a couple getter methods, stock list app and stock app. There's a method for opening up that third application right there. And then the initialize is basically pretty much all the code. Stock list app is stock list app new. Stock app, you get your domain from the stock list app, and that's all you need to tie them together. And I bring this up because again, kind of one of those life lessons. It's like, if you're just doing small things, this is neat. It's like, okay, that's neat. It's clever. But the thing is, if you start scaling it, then all of a sudden it's a huge benefit. It's and I worked at a hedge fund, and we used a similar a similar framework. And as we started scaling up to hundreds of application pieces and tying them together, we noticed some things. The framework data or the framework code we're using all the time. So it's really well tested and rock solid and works great. And then all those pieces we can reuse in multiple areas. And remember back to the thing I was talking about with Smalltalk as an advantage for the ROI, the return on investment for a software system over its life cycle. Well, this was one example that really stood out to me when I used it at the hedge fund, was if you were able to cut down on some of the code and have something where you can have this type of modularity in Smalltalk, it was just a huge benefit because there's a whole lot less code. The code is really well tested, and a lot of your maintenance depends on how much code you've got. So less code, less expense, easier to find things, easier to fix things. It snowballs as things scale up. So I want to emphasize that when you start to scale things in Smalltalk, make sure you're taking advantage of that, because there's some great opportunity in Smalltalk to get some really big savings. Showed some of the hidden gems tools. A quick mention on our upgrade cycle. We recommend all our customers keep as up to date as possible to minimize liabilities, make sure that they can use the latest operating system, the latest security protocols, and other refinements that we offer for the platforms that we run on. I might want to mention some of our resources, but by the way, if you go to our website, Cincom, cincomsmalltalk.com, we've recently, the marketing team has revamped that. I think it looks really nice. And we've got lots of resources. If you're a customer and you're not getting the digest, you might want to consider asking for that. We send out a monthly digest with lots of things going on, tips, suggestions, links to the screencasts, links to tutorials, events like this one that we're on right now are listed there. So you can see these things. There's a blog, different facts. Hey, do you run on the M1 processor? You'll find that there. And by the way, that is and has been in development for a while. We're well aware of it and on top of it. Tutorials, the hidden gems, I alluded to it. I showed you a couple shorter examples of the hidden gems, but the hidden gems walks you through more explicitly through how to build and how to use those things. Events like this, the UK STUG, videos and presentations, technical and non-technical, books and media, and also Smalltalk opportunities that we're aware of. We will post there as well. One of the things that we have our personal use license product and our commercial license. And marketing introduced something called Rev, which is a way to get started as a customer. You can basically go online and buy the product. If you don't want to fully commit and talk to a salesperson, you can kind of try it out for a year and see if it works for you. And we've had a lot of people jump on this and take advantage of that. So it's a bridge. There's a URL at the bottom. And if you wish to connect with us, Suzanne is the director of Smalltalk Global Operations. We call her the Lady of Smalltalk. I'm the product manager. I welcome any feedback, any questions, anybody, or if you just want to chat about Smalltalk and what's going on. And also we have a star team in case somebody's out on vacation, here's a team receives these emails. And we also make posts on Twitter about a number of things too. And with that, I open it to first, thank you everyone very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about Smalltalk anytime, and you're listening to this. I hope there was something new you learned, something you got out of it, and look forward to hearing your feedback. Giovanni.
Thanks, Arden, for the presentation. If anyone's got any questions, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I took a note of some of the questions, Gia, so I won't make people scroll through and ask them again, if that's okay.
Sure, if you want to go ahead.
Arden recognizes my voice so well.
Sorry, who's this? No.
Yeah, this is Suzanne. Peter asked while you were going through demo and some of the new stuff going on, you had mentioned Cincom is looking into multi-thread capable VM. Can you expand on that? And then he also wanted to know, in the matrix example, how much memory does each VM require? Because he's looking for a scalable web server that does not use too much RAM. Suggestions.
Okay, sure. One at a time. With the multi-threaded VM, we're early looking at that. We think it is viable depending on customer interest. We know we have some customers who think that would be good for their scenario. So we are looking into that, but we're still early in that. So we don't have anything that you can try. If you are interested in that, we welcome your feedback, how you might use that. And I think also for a lot of people, the asynchronous things that we discussed, I recommend looking at some of those. So like the matrix. So for your question, by default, matrix opens up the same image as you're using. So if you have an image built up with your application and the work that you need, it'll launch a headless version of that. So it really depends on how large that is. You can, for how much memory it's going to take up. Also, how many you start up. So for example, in that example, I started up 5 VMs. How many VMs might you want to start up? Well, it depends. If you want an 8-core CPU and you want to max it out, you might start up 8. If you want to be able to do other stuff, you might start up 7, or it's probably something that you want to benchmark and see what number works the best without thrashing the machine. So it depends. Or if you're concerned with the amount of memory on your machine, you can, Matrix allows you to start up and communicate with a headless image on a remote machine as well. So you could have another machine maybe with much more memory available and start up multiple images there. So it's pretty flexible. There are ways to specify starting up a different image that's set up differently. There is an API for that too. I haven't used that personally. Usually it's things that are in the current image you're working with. So that's the one that I find is used most frequently. I hope that answers your question. So sorry, I don't see the chat right now. So I have my.
There was also a question that just came in. Can you tell the difference between polycephaly and matrix? Since you're on matrix.
Yes.
And you love matrix. So
she loved both polycephaly and matrix.
I know.
Polycephaly uses pipes for communicating between the headless images, and it uses a different mechanism for serializing and deserializing the objects. Matrix uses sockets and uses extremes for serialization. Okay, that's right. Polycephaly uses BOSS for serialization and deserialization, whereas Matrix uses extremes and sockets. So polycephaly, pipes and BOSS, Matrix, sockets, and extremes. That is the primary difference between the two.
Okay, Arden, how is the CST VM performance benchmark compared within Smalltalk dialects, and how does it compare to other programming languages these days?
I haven't benchmarked it against another particular one. I do note that, you know, it used to be a big deal years ago where if you wanted something fast, well, you use the FFI, and you wrote, if you needed something super high performance, you wrote it in C and called it from Smalltalk, so you could get the best of both worlds. Over the last couple of decades, we've seen the acceptance and adoption of dynamic languages like Smalltalk, where it's less of a big deal. You have other opportunities like with things like Matrix to improve your throughput with other things. So typically not as big of an issue today than it used to be several decades back. It was interesting when Smalltalk first came out, it always seemed that the computer power was it was just ahead of the curve of computer power, where you wanted some more, but much less of an issue today. There are more questions.
Yeah, could you elaborate a little bit more on they didn't get quite the answer on the best way to use Cincom Smalltalk to deploy multi-CPU core web app, such as that a low RAM is used. Low RAM is used is important because cloud servers are priced based on number of CPUs and amount of RAM.
I think what you'd want to do is if you have the application running in a single image, you can experiment and benchmark and see if the current image is within your size restrictions. If not, and you want that image to do something very specific, you can winnow down the image to something much smaller that just focuses on what you want that particular. So you might have images that are, if you want to do 5 different things, you might have 5 different images that are cut down to focus just on that one specific thing. So you can start them up and run them in a minimal footprint for that. And you can run them either locally or remotely. But basically, for every scenario, you're going to have to try some of the different options, think about what works best for your scenario, and benchmark. Say, okay, well, I think, you know, that three images will work best, but I found that running 5 improves my throughput. So it's really a case of customizing what works best for the context in which you're using it, and making some educated guesses and benchmarking with the tools and flexibility available. So like I mentioned with Matrix, you can run the images on the same machine, you can run them on a remote machine, or a combination of that. So you could start up maybe a couple on the same machine, start up more on a remote machine, and which ones you start up and how large they are depends on what you have loaded in them and how you have specified them. So there's lots of flexibility. There's not one set answer to answer that question.
Can I ask something via audio?
Sure.
Yeah, hi. About this matrix, I was thinking, you told us it transfers basically the image and then it runs the code, no? So I think this is intended for very heavy processes, because just to transfer and start the image will take about a couple of seconds, no?
It actually doesn't transfer the image. The image needs to be in place on the remote machine or in place on your local machine already. It just launches them.
I see. So it has not the same state of my local machine.
That's correct.
Okay, now, okay, I see better now. Thank you.
Very welcome. Right. So basically it's you'd prepare the environment, and this is launching a headless image. So it comes up with no user interface, and that should save something in the footprint, but it basically works as a drone in the background. So it's
Yes. I was thinking like that because we were chatting about the fork. No, you know, so talking about fork, I was thinking that it was replicating my current system, you know, but it's not like that. It's not like
Sure.
that. Okay. This answers my question. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I vaguely recall in the past at some point that VisualWorks, at least on some platforms, if you're running the same image VM combo in separate processes, it would like do shared memory on perm space or something, which would aid in code locality.
There was something a long time ago. Oh, I forgot what it was. It was some very specialized piece of hardware that actually allowed that. But in general, we do not have that. And it would actually be, if you think about it, if you had a couple images start up and share memory, you basically have to have a new garbage collection scenario that works in a concurrent fashion. So it could get pretty complex pretty quickly and take up a good bit of time. So that is something that has been discussed in the past, but it's not clear that it would be easy or beneficial compared to other mechanisms that we have now.
Yeah. It all depends on the problem. Depends on the problem to solve.
Yes.
Yeah. Because consider, I was thinking right now, imagine I have in my image a huge matrix and I need to elaborate it, okay? Like compute agent values, suppose, no? So in this case, maybe it would be convenient just to really fork the image and do the agent values calculation somewhere else, because it will take so long that I don't care about the time it takes me to copy it somewhere.
Right, and in some of those cases, like for example, on a 32-bit environment on Windows, where you're limited to a certain size, so you can only load so much, so much massive data into an image before you run out of space. And of course, you can move up to a 64-bit image, but if we use the example of a 32-bit image, you could launch other images through Matrix and tell them to load up a particular piece of data that basically takes up most of the space. And you could do several that load up different data. And then when you want to access that data, just communicate with that particular image that's housing that data. So there's lots of neat ways to utilize that capability. And that's just an example for the type of problem that you mentioned.
If I recall correctly, I think it was on Sparks way back decades ago, but I believe that the prime benefit that we're looking at was for the working set code to not get replicated amongst the instruction caches, and of course the particularly the dynamically translated code. This this way, since each core would presumably be running the same working set instruction, it could get benefits on the instruction cache.
That's right. Yes, there was. And the one I was thinking about, I think it was the Sequent machine, which is I believe long defunct, but that was the one that I think could share some of the object memory. But yeah, there was something that shared, shared some of the code. Good memory.
We have a question from Tim about deploying consumer web app on Cincom. Do you provide any help, for example, Docker images or a way to deploy to a cloud service?
Clouds. Could you repeat the question?
Tim, do you want to ask the question yourself?
Yeah. I was just wondering if you had like any of, I guess, the hidden gems, or if you've got a web app and you just want to deploy it onto AWS or DigitalOcean or something like that, have you got any sort of packaging tools so that you're helped? You don't have to sort of launch all this crap yourself, basically. I'm just wondering if you guys had investigated anything in that area.
That's been on a distance radar, but actually some of the folks doing that have just gone ahead and done that, and didn't seem to have too much difficulty in doing that. I know at I think it was maybe around 2009 or 2010 at an ESUG, we demonstrated launching and using VisualWorks image on AWS back then. So although it might be nice to have some packaging tools, I'm not sure how. We haven't had much interest in doing that, but
yeah, I suppose it depends on customers. I'm just thinking, use cases. You've written your little application. Particularly maybe people in that Rev whatever acronym it was. And you just want to like get it up there on the web and show people what it's like. It can be frustrating and difficult to start. And I think there's things like is it App Runner or something on AWS now, which I think they're all sort of Docker based. It would seem like it might be an easy fit to just have something a bit pre-packaged where it's just a click in it, give it your credentials, and it'll put one up for you. And
I'm aware of some people that have deployed using Docker, but have not had a whole lot of interest on that.
Tim, I seem to remember there were talks, ESUG talks quite recently. I say quite recently, actually, I think I'm 2016 or something like that, about the SUE. If you're thinking specifically of web apps, there was deploying a SUE and Apex type web app onto the cloud. I used them when I was deploying an app of my own onto the cloud, which I think it was just sort of taking you through it, but I don't know if that would be relevant to the kind of things you were doing. It wasn't using any special tools or something, but just here's an example of getting your light cell or whatever it was. Can't quite remember all the terms, and then shoving it up there and getting it running and connecting it up and so on. There would be a place to start, perhaps. Sorry, Arden, just mentioning that.
That's cool. All right, thanks. I guess while there's that moment of silence, I did have an earlier question. Have you looked at like the open source community is, well, certainly Faro has put things into Git with tonal format. Have you got anything for helping people pull libraries from that into VisualWorks so that you can ease porting and reuse things? If you see something you like and you wanted to convert it over.
We've looked at that and even did some studies on that, and we welcome any customers who require that to talk to us. One of the things, that there are some things with Store, it it does a lot of things, and because it uses relational databases and queries, it can provide some information, such as, for example, past, show me all the history of this method, and it can provide a large list very quickly and easily. And some of those things moving to say a Git system would be, I'm not sure the response time would be acceptable or would require a lot of additional work and support of an additional source code storage system. So for most part, we've had some interest with people that say, yeah, Git would be neat to look at, but they also tell us that store is working great for them, and they might take a look at it out of interest. It might be useful for pulling other things in, certainly.
Yeah, and I mean, just to be able to import it, I think I understand, like you said, browsing additions and some of those sorts of things are, quite unique, and it's quite nice to work in that way. But if you just wanted to just import the source and get it there, have you got to fire up a Pharaoh image, export it, and then import the source, or are you able to just connect and suck it into store, I guess, is what I was curious about.
Right, we have nothing on that currently.
But I guess there's ways around it, so it's there are ways to do it. So I was just yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, Arden, you mentioned the personal use license as one of the pillars of promoting Smalltalk or VisualWorks Smalltalk. And I see it seems to be that on one hand, it's possible to have a personal use license with a broken Mac VM. That's unbelievable. And secondly, of course, you have a new VM, a working VM, so you can't port it back to VisualWorks 8.3, but also you can't put on VisualWorks 9 as a personal use license. So for me, this is the picture you don't care. Any comments?
Sure, I can make some comments. I can assure you we do care, and I understand the frustration if people are on a Mac and want to use the PUL with the current Macs. It does not work. But one of the things is that we are customer focused, and we actually have in some countries still, we have some export restrictions. So we actually have customers that do not have the latest version of the product, and executive management has said you will not give PUL versions of the product that are newer than a customer is able to get. And that's frustrating. It's a governmental issue, but that is primarily what's driving it, that we want to make sure our customers get it first. And we're kind of in a difficult situation with some of that because of some countries' regulations.
So
and
why
I wish that was
can't
not
you?
the case.
Yeah,
Let me finish answering that question. You said, could we not backport the VM?
exactly.
I can assure you, we attempted to do that, to take the 9.0, the working Mac, and because of so many changes that have been put into the products in 9.0, at the point when we said, we need to stop this project, our engineers have other focuses. It was, the 8.3, I'll talk VisualWorks here because that seems to be what you're talking about if it's Mac. But we had the 8.3 with trying to port the Mac VM, and there were about 56 other ARs that needed to go into that in order for the backported VM to work on an 8.3, on the 8.3 PUL. So we actually ended that project so that, as Arden said many times, we could focus on our customers and partners. The PUL is not dead. We still have people actively working with the PUL, downloading the current version we have available. downloading it for the Mac, they're downloading it for Windows and Linux, and they're using it just fine to evaluate our products. That's what the product is there. That's what the PUL is there for.
Yeah, but not on the Mac.
I'm aware of that.
I've used the PUL on Macs, and as a quick thing to try, I've had less problems using the Mac X11 VM than the Quartz VM. So it's, you know, it's just one quick thing to try. See if it helps.
I have tried both, and both crash. They don't start. They're, as I said, I've tried, of course, both to make it work, but. One thing is here that Cincom is very silent about the reasons of what is going on. And although don't really understand what's going on with the governmental issues, but this needs to be explained. And then maybe people say, okay, Cincom cannot do anything about this, it has to be like it. But I don't understand, this is Cincom policy. Because this is not government policy that you cannot have a pool version when not all customers have the newest version. That can't be a governmental issue. That is a Cincom policy issue.
That is a Cincom
Exactly.
policy, and
Exactly.
it has been written. It has been stated in the VWNC list. I know I wrote it, and it was responded to, and others about it.
The problem is there that you don't explain it. You say that first the customer has to get it. Now, this is the 9.0 version is out for over a year. And you have to explain why the people cannot get the version, because it's unbelievable that they cannot get the version.
Yeah,
right?
I know it's
you say it can't, but
if, okay, if we.
So you need to be more open in explaining what is going on. Why you can't things that seem to be obvious that you could be able to do, but you say you can't.
There are different government regulations for different countries. For quite a while, we only went through certification for the US government. Other governments then had criteria for certification for import and for export. And we have to get those certifications before we can export our products to certain countries.
But then again, 8.3 is out to these countries. What's new in 9.0 and 9.1 that they cannot get the certification?
Is it crypto related?
Yeah, that's why encryption would be crypto related. So yes, it's
yeah, but you're saying that they took out encryption out of the image.
If you want to speak to every government in the world to find out how their certifications are addressed, then I welcome you to do that. But it's something we have to do by law in order to export our products. And because we have customers in certain regions where we can't even produce or deliver our full product to them, we will not be delivering a new version of our personal use license until we can deliver them to our customers and partners. That is.
That's it, but B, that's Cincom policy that you can't. It's not government policy. It's not the problem of the government. It's
We're not
problem
going
of Cincom.
we're a commercial provider of Smalltalk. Why would we provide a free version of our product when we can't provide a full product for our customers and partners? You might think that's funny. I think it's funny that we would do it. You know, and I can't, I can't list off every certification, every government that we deal with. I actually, I'm not going to go through that, but that is our policy, that until we can provide with the full product, that it's not going to go out to the personal use license. And as I said, we did have a group of engineers who worked on trying to get the new VM to work on the 8.3 product. And there was just too much that had gone into the 9.0 products. And I would prefer that our engineering team is working on our future products and requests from our customers and partners.
But I understand that. But again, the question is, why do you start with downporting the 9 VM you know what the problem was with the change of the Apple operating system. So you kind of just fix those things that are related to the change of the operating system. That should be quite easy.
Can I step
You know what,
in? I think we're chasing. I think we're going around in circles on this one. And I think
I agree.
I think you've raised the concern. I think Cincom has answered it very, very well. And
yes,
if that's all right, if we could just move on to some other questions as well. And I think this
Tim,
one is
I'd
perhaps
like to talk about this for hours. Please.
No, please.
All right,
Tim.
Okay, I'm gonna make an executive decision here, and I'm gonna refer a question raised by Mark about
Yes.
on Windows. I can build a single .exe file. Is there something available that does the same on Linux or Mac OS?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
We deploy application on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. And so I built single, executable for the sake of distribution and security, provided no DLLs, no SSLs, nothing like that. However, I don't know how to do that on Linux, if it's available at all. It's in the past, it was available on a Mac many years ago. Does anybody knows how to do that?
The only one I'm aware of is the one we have for compressing and deploying on Windows. is the
Yes,
only one
that's what
aware
I'm
of.
using.
Yep,
Yes.
yep.
Okay, so
It's not really an answer, but a quick little hack. If you actually look at the image file format, the first line of it looks like a Unix script that executes the VM on the image. So as long as we have the VM in your path, and you can actually pretend that the image is the executable.
well, yeah, okay, all right. It was there from a day, I remember it in 92 was the same way in 91 or something. And another question for Arden. Are you guys planning to put like a, I don't know, base system as a store? Because every time I install it and I have to replicate, all the base classes and everything to the store and make an image, which is already reconciled to it. So if I by accident modify base classes somewhere, I know for a fact that I'm doing it. It would be much nicer if you guys provide at least maybe SQLite store file.
Okay, I'll note that. I do know that some customers, when a new release comes out, they basically publish their own local base. But I'll
Yeah, I do it
note
all the
that.
time,
Yeah.
and I can see like a progression now from, let's say, 7.0, 7.9, or 8 and 9, and so on and so forth. However, very often time when the stuff changes and there are some override in one package over another, even being system packages, I get some kind of very non-deterministic results sometimes.
Can I mention, we did actually do precisely that around 7.8 time. We experimented with 7.8, 7.8.1, providing updated and reconciled published bases, which people could reconcile. There wasn't, if I recall correctly, much take up at that time. It didn't seem to be a thing that people were particularly requesting. But obviously, Arden's here. If interest is shown, if sufficient customer interest is shown, then it's a thing very doable. So, where people are here to hear requirements and interests.
Well, it's an interesting because I would trust you guys more than I trust myself sometimes.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Yeah, and any requests like that, feel free to, for product. I mean, you somewhere around here, I saw Arden's. I know how to get in touch with Arden. I think everyone knows how to get in touch with Arden. But if you have requests and if it's something, just bring it to his attention. And we have a list of one-off inquiries, but also inquiries that could be helpful to many, many people. So, always bring those to product management's attention.
Yes, please.
We want to help.
So we got
There's
Sorry.
There's a couple questions. I'm sorry, Gio. There are a couple questions, there are comments, and it's the age-old, why aren't more people using Smalltalk? That one, is that what you were going to bring up, Gio?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, that is something that, you know, you know, we all struggle with. And, you know, we see, you know, I see from our marketing or lead generation team, so many people downloading the PUL. So, you know, we know that there's interest there. I get questions and comments whenever I go to other events. Yes, you know, back in the old days when we used to travel and go to events, I didn't just go to Smalltalk conferences. I went to, and I still do, engage with the Java community and other communities, you know, Ruby, all of those. And sometimes it's just talking about it, talking about why you love Smalltalk. I know, you know, if marketing loves it whenever they see a story or even on Twitter. I know a lot of us here are on Twitter. So whenever we see requests, whenever we see anything on Twitter, you know, just you know, retweeting and commenting in a positive way about why we love Smalltalk, because we do get new users on a regular basis. There are people who are trying to find a new, I can't even remember what's the line we say, a new tool for their toolbox, you know, finding new things. But it's the age old. I mean, this conversation and that question has been coming up, you know, I'm not going to say since the mid 90s, because in the mid 90s, we didn't see it as much, but definitely in the last 10 to 15 years, it's coming up more and more. And I think we all, as fans of Smalltalk, we scratch our heads like, what do you mean you're not using Smalltalk? Or what do you mean you don't understand this? And I saw one of the comments where, you know, in the office, people are saying, you know, or laughing at you for using Smalltalk. And, you know, I hear that when I go into back in the old days when I used to go into customer meetings, you know, and I would talk in front of a group of, you know, there's the Smalltalk team, the Java team, the Ruby team, the Python team, they're all the different teams. And I'm talking to all these developers and, you know, it's just, you know, all of us within Smalltalk, everyone who enjoys and loves Smalltalk, it's taking more time outside of the Smalltalk community to talk about the why Smalltalk. But we spend so much time with, you know, obviously, you know, like minds, and you want to be able to talk about it and dive in a little bit more. But that you know, if anyone has an answer for that one, bring it on, you know, because that it's the same question forever.
Well, if I can
my
observe
quick
something.
comment is I believe at least some of the burden is on all of us. And I'm sure we all have the experience of trying to hook someone into Smalltalk. And I certainly try to do whatever I can. And believe it or not, the one big thing that I found is a hurdle to getting people into it is just no easy way to change the font size and colors. That always is, it seems to be the first big hurdle.
Although,
Well, my observation on the subject, I am using Smalltalk for nearly 30 years now. Gonna be like in a month, it'll be 30 years. The question why we're using Smalltalk and justification for it is as long as I remember using Smalltalk. Nobody asked me why would I use Java or C++ or something, but everybody would ask, why you use Smalltalk? It doesn't still exist anymore, you know? Kind of frustration.
I think some
Yeah,
of it
but-
even, just if you look at the, you know, the list of benefits to Smalltalk, like it's object oriented, and other products can say we're object oriented, and it's a lot more of that. But if you just look at it superficially, you know, there's lots of other newer things that people say, well, we've got that, but it's not as good. But you don't really necessarily understand that until you spend some time with it. So that's part of the education process, I think, And part of
here's
why
another
I
thing.
discussed, why, how to discuss what's great about Smalltalk with non-small talkers. So I hope some of the ideas earlier in the discussion were, pique some ideas of how we can talk and attract more people. And if you guys have some more ideas, please
Can
please
I
send them.
just ask you a question? Recently, I visited, Ivy League college where my son was going for electrical engineering, and I was talking to faculty which was doing like a data processing and computing and whatever, and people were talking about object-oriented stuff. When I start asking them questions, turns out they haven't heard about Smalltalk even. Professors in Ivy League college didn't have any idea that it still exists somewhere.
Right.
Well, believe it or not, guys, it's 2 years ago. I was there sitting and talking to 3 professors, okay, in the different departments. And that was, how many schools are teaching Smalltalk? It used to be like 3 in North America. One was in Chicago, whatever, Urbana-Champaign. One was in Canada. Anybody else? Until it's presented to the students, who study computer science, it's not going to fly ever.
But there are problems with that. I'm a teacher at the university. So I'm teaching a course on software engineering, which is 2nd semester.
Yeah.
I cannot use Smalltalk there because the students started with Java and no chance to teach them Smalltalk and the topics of the course. The other course I have is on microservices and web services. And I discussed this with Helge at some time about using Smalltalk there, but there we have the same problem. I mean, I have to teach them first Smalltalk for them to be able to use Smalltalk. But then there is no benefit of learning Smalltalk for web services, for microservices, for running this in a Docker image. So this is all the things you have to do yourself. There is no nice REST API. You have to write your own servlets to handle REST calls and these kind of stuff. So yeah, there is no place to use or to teach Smalltalk.
What about Ruby? Lots of people, it seems like.
Can I dissent on what you're saying right now? I'm a recent programmer of Smalltalk, so I don't have your long experience, but I can tell you that there is something really different if you do web programming in Smalltalk, which I'm trying in this moment. And the really different thing is that I can change stuff while the server is running. This you can't do anywhere, maybe in some Lisp images, but it's not the common way you do it in any other platform. And this is a huge benefit, I think.
I just like to, from an industry point of view, kind of following up on the web stuff. I don't think anyone's going to disagree that algorithmically Smalltalk can kind of be far more interesting, far more productive, far more fun to work with, and so on. No question about that. That's not our challenge. Our challenge is that in an industrial setting, we're trying to roll out things like mobile applications to our web-based app. And ours is something that we went live with in 2015. So it's a fairly recent, relatively speaking, large enterprise Smalltalk application running on Gemstone and developed in VisualWorks. I don't have a technical option to do something equivalent to Flutter, for example, which is the direction we're going. So I have to now move our Smalltalk bias to domain code, which it does very well, and have the interface part of it move out into something like we're going with Dart and Flutter as kind of the interface layer, because I don't have a choice. Given a choice, I would love to use the same language for the entire stack, but that's simply not available. And I totally get that it's a chicken and egg problem. You can't use the tool until someone develops it, but you're not going to develop it until you've got customers and interest and money to do that. But that's the reality that I have. So right now, when we're hiring people, we do have a few new hires that a couple guys that are keen and they're learning and they find it interesting. But our long-term strategy is really to hire people that are going to work on things like Dart and Flutter and get an interest perhaps in what's happening on the other side of that API call. And maybe they find it more interesting and then kind of get sucked into that environment. But in the absence of the tools and a way to deploy on mobile apps, we have no choice but to move into other technologies for the interface side of our application.
Okay, can I propose one thing which I came across recently? As an interface to our application, I am trying to write something to generate SVG and use an SVG in a browser as UI while talking to VisualWorks images in the background, generating those SVG and receiving SVG requests. How about that as a portable UI platform for the product in general?
What was the name of that, Mark?
SVG, you know, like
yeah,
it's supported by browser, and it's a very big thing which you can use. It just very richly done. So let's say somebody talk and ask a question about Cairo, but what if we can produce our UI in SVG?
Doesn't what's the event planning system do that? Joachim's thing.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think it uses
HRWorks?
Yes Planner. I think Yes Planner uses SVG, or it did it at one point, because I remember a previous ESUG mentioning that. I mean, you know, in terms of Smalltalk in the browser, the Cincom presentation said, you know, you can point yourself to other, you know, we're sort of all pro Smalltalk, and so, you know, some of the open source Smalltalks are reaching into that area, you know, with the Squeak.js and a JavaScript VM that will run, you know, an image in the browser. So, you know, the story of you can actually push objects over to a browser-based image. That is quite interesting. And we had what was the guy's name? Giovanni, on the tip of my tongue, actually, that did a presentation on that. I mean, you know, it doesn't work with Cincom Smalltalk at the moment, but you know, that is.
You mean Eric?
Yeah, Eric. Yes, Eric
yes.
on bike. Yes. You know, he gave, you know, quite an interesting presentation on just that, which I think is, you know, what this you know, the question that was asked was how do you do client side stuff and interact with JavaScript and use, you know, WebGL or some of these sorts of technologies. And it might be worth watching that presentation if you didn't see it, for a bit of inspiration.
I think the strong point here is, for, in my experience, and trying to push Smalltalk to let's say leading edge technology, is that Smalltalk has its strong features, and it was very strong for desktop applications. It was very good for complex web application in the early web days when C-side was a big thing, and there was no Ruby on Rails, or was just nascent. And then mobile and client side web applications came in, and we basically lost that ground. So that's a real thing. And now even things like Flutter is taking a lot of adoption because of that, because it's a multi-platform client solution, and things are more API based these days. So it's actually, I agree with Bob that to model business domains and to maintain and support them for a long time, I still haven't seen something that is as good as Smalltalk. And even I would say that even Java is a good fit for that, second to Smalltalk, of course. But because for the long term, when you have to model complex business domains, well, I haven't found something that is as a Smalltalk for that. But for most client applications and other things, everything is so fragmented these days that maybe you don't have a super large application as most of us are used to.
Yeah. To add to that, and to go back to the original question, how to get people interested in Smalltalk, you know, in the context of finding people to hire for that, you know, I have spent lots of time interviewing students that were still in university or just finished university to join the pipeline of our interns and our analysts. And something that I always highlight is that, in the end, the programming language and the libraries and all that, they can be relatively easy to learn. The trouble is learning the business domain, right? Especially if you work like me in financial applications, there is a lot that you need to learn. And, by the time you learn that, you can learn, four other languages, basically. So the important thing is hire people that want to learn, that want to work, get result in the business domain that you're working on. And then once you get them in, you can show them how easily you can do things with Smalltalk compared with Python, compared with Java, how easily you can refactor, you can debug issues as they happen, and possibly try and basically use that to filter out the people that you think you can keep, as opposed to try to get every single person to take a look at Smalltalk and then not liking the fact that 90% of those, they're not going to like it.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Neil, remember the presentation he did last year is also reminding everyone that you can write JavaScript in the image via Apex. And then Torsten, you have a comment. Yeah, and do you want to? You put a comment on the chat. Do you want to report that?
Maybe I explained directly.
Sorry, maybe I wrote to Torsten. I thought it was private. I didn't want to. Maybe if you want to answer to me, or we can talk about it, whatever you wish.
Yeah, we can talk later after recording stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can I ask you another silly question? Maybe it's come from memory. When the Java was just introduced, Smalltalk had a framework called Java Blend, where I could generate my application in VisualWorks and push it out as a bunch of Java classes to be seen and used in a browser. Remember that time? About 20 years old.
I was with Digitalk then, so I wouldn't know about VisualWorks.
Well, Digitalk has their own beautiful applications, yeah.
Oh, don't get me started. I love Digitalk so much.
Me too. And I love the people who'd worked there at some point in time.
I love that. Great. I know I shouldn't say this while I'm working for Cincom, but they hear it all the time. That was just one of my favorite places in the world. And I still keep in touch with so many of those people. And it was just wonderful experience.
Yeah, Portland was a great place.
As a fellow Digitalk fan, is Digitalk still stuck in licensing hell, never to see the light of day, or?
I don't know what you mean by that. We have.
I heard there was like problems with, I had this question. I don't even remember who I was talking to. Someone mentioned there was some kind of business-related licensing thing with that there was no way to continue the line for business reasons, not technical reasons. I was just, don't know if you heard of that.
I haven't heard of that because we have customers using it. So please don't say. Mike, we have customers using.
No, like continuing the line, not.
Oh yeah, they are, and we've made updates to the products for our Visual Smalltalk enterprise customers. So yeah, we still have customers using the product.
It's an old memory, so I apologize.
Yep. No worries. But anyway, Mike, I'm glad you're there because you had asked about pricing for.
Yeah. I wanted to let the personal use license thread fades, but I was just.
Oh, you were all trying to save me, and I didn't even see it in the chat. I'm so sorry, but I did mention, and Arden mentioned this a little bit. Something that the team worked on with management, something that's never been done before. I love it when I hear that. So I was so excited to get to say it. Never been done before at Cincom. But we do have a program called the Rev program, Rev 9.1. That program is, the reason that it's unique is one, you can just buy it online. It's a 1 year, 12-month license. So it's not a committed, you're not using, it's not all of a sudden you're using subscription. I mean, the funny thing is, funny for me, when Cincom first acquired VisualWorks and started transferring the licenses over to Cincom licensing, I can imagine some people on this call right now just cringing. What will she say next? But anyway, it was Cincom has subscription licensing, and that was foreign to what everyone else was using. And now subscription licensing is so normal for everyone. But we've kind of gone back in time and created the Rev program, which is a one-time license. And at the end of that term, of course, you can convert to the subscription license and you just start getting all your regular stuff, everything. And I think the way that Arden explained it, it's a bridge between kind of the PUL and becoming a full-fledged licensed customer, except for the fact that you joining the Rev program, you would be, and if you join, you are a licensed user, you get all licenses, that any releases that we have during that 12-month period of time, you receive, just like any of our other customers would receive it. So it was a simplified program that we thought, this would make it easy, for people who, no offense against any salespeople on the call, but people who just don't want to talk to salespeople. I just want to go online, I want to buy my product, and I want to just get releases and, don't talk to me. And that's kind of what this program is. So there's that available. The Rev program is, it's $1,000 for the license. You get all releases during that 12-month period of time. You get full support. You work with, I think there was actually a question in the, you get the marketing support, business development support. If you have an application that you write with it, it's a limited VAR, so you can't distribute your product through the Rev program. You would need to convert to a full value-added reseller license. So if you're interested in that program, feel free. If you're interested, well, I'm already, I've already written my application using the PUL, and now I want to distribute it. Get in touch with us, and we'll put you in touch with the appropriate account manager in your area. But it's a pretty easy program. I don't have all the stats. I know I saw a report recently. The marketing team presented the other day, and we've had, I think the program has been around for about 4 or 5 years now. And but the program has been around for about 4 or 5 years now. And we've had probably, I know it's over 50% have converted to the full licensing or full, they're now just getting their subscription based licensing. And quite a few of them, I know that marketing has written up some really cool success stories with some of their applications that they're using. And that's part of the partner program where, the marketing group will help you write a story and then promote that, get you into different vertical markets where even if you're an individual, you might not have that reach. You might not have the experience to write your user story, or you might not have those connections with different analysts or different publications. And the marketing team has just picked up some of those applications, and it's really been cool to see it. Not to talk about it again, it really reminded me a lot of the old partner program we had at Digitalk, where we added a lot to that. So
I'll read the details. So someone sent me a link. But what happens after the 1 year again? Can you
after the 1 year?
license?
Yeah, after the 1 year, if you're like, nope, that's it. I didn't like this bridge. I'm not going across it. I'm not going to finish my walk across the bridge. Then
No, I'm saying if you do like it, can you renew the Rev license or?
You cannot renew the Rev license, but basically, probably I think it's 10 months into it. Account management will reach out to you and say, hey, you've been here, you know, how are you enjoying it? Then you just sign the full license. You just convert to a regular subscription license, which is basically the Rev license, but now you're on a subscription. But the thing about the Rev is that it's not an automatic renewal, and you don't have to call us and say, stop my renewal. You know, you don't have to, it just ends. Your contract with us ends.
Okay.
I'd like it to end. So I'm sure there are people who will bug you and say, why not renew? And so it says that it's not renewable. It's just not renewable as the Rev. You then you convert to a full Cincom Smalltalk licensed user, depending on what you use it for. So you might want to be an individual. So you might either be a customer, an individual user, or you might be a VAR. And that's really it's determining how are you using the product? How do you want and need to use the product? What are we going to call you? Are you a customer? Are you a VAR? How can we help you to further your journey with Smalltalk?
If there was a hobbyist license, I'd go for that.
Yeah.
Hobbyist, probably
Right now.
POL.
Yeah, we have had hobbyists join using that license, Mike. So
No. I mean, I don't want to bring up the old thing. It's like
Yeah.
I'm considering getting a commercial just so that I could see what's new.
Yep.
Just
Yep.
because
Yep.
it's
Got
been a
it.
while, and I don't want to ask you how long will we have to wait.
yeah, because I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking that question, Mike. I appreciate it.
For all I know, a cheap hobbyist of no deployment might satisfy that business thing that you're a paying customer, but so they can get the newest version, you just don't have license to sell anything with it. I don't know. I'm just
Right. Yep.